Hello, my friend. You asked me very astutely, importantly, and rightly, what about the people whose lives are under pressure and who live in situations where their survival is at risk? Well, my friend, that is a situation that is all too widely spread these days, and my heart absolutely goes out to anyone who is in those circumstances. And of course, the whole world should stand by and support people who find themselves in those dire circumstances where they're under fire, or where they end up losing their home and their safety, and they end up in what amounts in effect to a kind of concentration camp, where they are in a refugee camp without any of the comforts that we totally take for granted. Of course, my friend, those are dire circumstances. And it is in those dire circumstances that our existential understanding becomes ever greater. Viktor Frankl wrote about this very well indeed, where he said that it was in the concentration camps where it became obvious how some people behaved horribly, like swine, in fact, he said, and others came to their spiritual height. They raised themselves up, and no matter how they were suffering and how deprived they were, they found a way to keep faith with themselves, to keep their integrity, and to keep on the path of doing what is right, and doing what is right by the people around them too. And they were able to create something better through having that attitude. So he spoke about having a creative attitude towards one's suffering, and learning how to be human and how to be deeply spirited and spiritual, even in the worst of circumstances. And this, I believe, my friend, we practice on an everyday basis, while we have better circumstances than that. And of course, there are many people, even in societies and civilizations that are supposed to be wealthy, who are actually living in very dire conditions, in poverty, and without the means to enjoy life in an easy way, and who, as you pointed out too, might live in high-rise circumstances, squashed into a little flat with many people, and perhaps far away from areas where they can find peace and serenity. Now, mostly it is still possible to create spaces for oneself in nature, because nature is everywhere. The sky is everywhere, the weather is everywhere, and it is not that difficult to find a piece of ground that is not cemented over or bricked over. It is possible to find such spaces, as I know from having lived in inner city circumstances many times in my life. And I also know that even living in a crowded flat, you can still create an inner world and a kind of security in tiny corners that people may not be aware are there. For instance, in the cellar, or for instance, in the toilets. When circumstances are dire, creativity and an appreciation of what is still available to you, and an appreciation of what you can muster in yourself in order to make these dire circumstances a little bit better, are more important than ever. And I'm sure that I learned a lot of my inner skills in surviving and in thriving from having been through circumstances like those. Not in a war, though. That is something that I hope to never have to contend with. And as I said at the beginning, it is vital that humanity, through the United Nations and other such organizations, does right by the people who are in those very compromised circumstances. Let's not close our hearts to them. Let's imagine us living this ourselves and do what we can to lighten the load. Thank you, my friend, for asking that question. Thank you.